If an employee gets injured at work, one of the first questions employers ask is simple, but incredibly important. What exactly does workers' compensation cover? For business owners, HR leaders, and managers, understanding workers' comp isn't just about compliance. It's about knowing how to support your employees when something unexpected happens, while also protecting your business. And while workers' compensation laws vary from state to state, the core protections tend to follow a pretty similar structure. So today we're going to walk through what workers' compensation typically covers, what it usually doesn't cover, and what employers should understand before a workplace injury ever happens. Welcome back to Insights Delivered, brought to you by HR Delivered. This is the podcast where we break down real HR topics, compliance updates, and the workplace questions business owners and HR leaders are navigating right now. I'm Eric, and today we're talking about workers' compensation coverage, what it actually includes, why it matters for employers, and how understanding it can make a big difference when an injury occurs. Let's start with the basics. First, it helps to understand what workers' compensation insurance actually is. Workers' comp is a form of business insurance that most employers are required to carry once they reach a certain number of employees. The exact requirement depends on the state you're operating in, and sometimes the industry, but the purpose is the same everywhere. It exists to protect both employees and employers when a work-related injury or illness happens. If an employee gets hurt while doing their job, workers' compensation helps cover their medical expenses and part of their lost wages while they recover. In exchange, employees generally give up the right to sue their employer for negligence related to that injury. So it creates a system where employees receive support quickly without the need for lengthy legal disputes. Now, one of the most important things workers' compensation covers is medical care. If an employee is injured at work or develops a work-related illness, workers' comp typically pays for the treatment needed to help them recover. That can include emergency services, doctor visits, hospital stays, surgeries, physical therapy, prescription medications, and rehabilitation services. In some cases, it can even include medical devices like braces or crutches if they're necessary for recovery. And that coverage usually continues for as long as the treatment is considered medically necessary and directly related to the workplace injury. The insurance carrier reviews the claim and works with healthcare providers to determine what treatment falls within workers' compensation guidelines. Of course, medical care is only one part of the picture. If an employee is injured badly enough that they can't perform their job, workers' compensation also helps replace part of their income while they recover. Now, it's important to understand that this isn't usually a full paycheck replacement. Most states provide a percentage of the employee's average weekly wage, up to a state-mandated limit. These payments are typically referred to as disability benefits. And depending on the situation, those benefits might be classified as temporary or permanent, and either partial or total disability. That classification depends on the severity of the injury, the medical evaluation, and whether the employee is able to return to work. The goal is to give employees some financial stability while they focus on recovering. Sometimes recovery means more than just medical treatment. In situations where an employee can't return to their previous role, workers' compensation may also include vocational rehabilitation support. That might involve job retraining, career counseling, or skill development that helps the employee transition into a different role. Many employers also implement return-to-work programs that help injured employees safely ease back into the workplace. And interestingly, companies that actively support return-to-work efforts often see better outcomes, not just for the employee, but for the organization as well. It can reduce long-term claim costs and help maintain positive morale within the workplace. In the most serious cases, workers' compensation can also provide benefits to surviving family members if a work-related injury results in death. These death benefits may help cover funeral expenses and provide a portion of the employee's wages to eligible dependents. The exact amount and duration of those payments depend on state law and the employee's family situation. While it's the most difficult type of claim to talk about, it's also an important part of the protection workers' compensation provides. Now, even though workers' compensation offers broad protection, it's just as important for employers to understand where the limits are. For example, workers' comp usually doesn't cover injuries that occur outside of work-related duties. If someone gets hurt during a personal activity unrelated to their job, the claim may be denied. Injuries caused by drug or alcohol use may also be excluded depending on the state. Intentional self-inflicted injuries typically aren't covered either. Another area employers need to pay attention to is worker classification. Independent contractors generally aren't covered by workers' compensation. But misclassifying employees as contractors can create serious compliance issues, so it's something businesses should review regularly. And unlike personal injury lawsuits, workers' comp doesn't include damages for pain and suffering. It focuses specifically on medical bills, wage replacement, and recovery support. So what actually happens when an injury occurs? Typically, the process begins when the employee reports the injury to their employer. From there, the employer notifies their workers' compensation insurance carrier and submits the required documentation. The insurance company then reviews the claim, evaluates the medical information, and determines eligibility for benefits. One thing that makes a big difference in these situations is timing. Prompt reporting is critical. Delays in reporting a workplace injury can complicate the claims process and sometimes increase costs for the employer. For employers, understanding what workers' compensation covers and what it doesn't can make a huge difference when injuries happen. It helps businesses respond quickly, communicate clearly with employees, and stay aligned with workers' compensation laws. And for organizations operating across multiple states, it's especially important to stay updated on the specific regulations that apply in each location. At the end of the day, workers' compensation isn't just a compliance requirement. It's a safety net that protects employees while also protecting businesses from costly legal disputes. If you'd like the full breakdown of this topic, you can read the article on the HR Delivered blog at hrdelivered.com/blog. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the Insights Delivered podcast on Spotify and turn on notifications so you don't miss new episodes. Thanks for listening. I'm Eric, and we'll see you in the next episode.